Nobody believed in him, not because he was weak, but because the world is trained to doubt anything that doesn't look successful yet. He came from a place where expectations were low and excuses were normal, where people didn't ask what you wanted to become, only what job you could survive with. Dreams were treated like jokes and ambition was seen as arrogance. From the beginning, he felt it. The looks, the silence, the unspoken message that said, "You're not special." Teachers didn't expect much. Friends didn't take him seriously. Family cared, but only to the level they understood. They weren't evil. They were conditioned. Conditioned to believe that only a few people win. Conditioned to believe that struggle is permanent. Conditioned to believe that people like him don't rise. And slowly, without realizing it, that belief tried to enter his mind. There were days he questioned himself. Days he wondered if everyone else was right. Days where quitting felt logical. But something inside him refused to shut down. It wasn't confidence. It wasn't motivation. It wasn't talent. It was discomfort. Discomfort with a small life. Discomfort with average thinking. Discomfort with the idea of spending his entire life explaining why he never tried. So while nobody believed in him, he made a decision. If nobody was going to bet on him, he would bet on himself. That decision didn't change his life overnight. It changed his direction. He stopped waiting for approval. He stopped explaining his goals. He stopped arguing with people who had never built anything. He realized something most people never understand. You don't need belief from others to start. You only need belief to continue. He worked in silence. No announcements, no validation, no applause, just progress. While others talked about what they wanted, he focused on what he could control. His time, his effort, his habits, his mindset. He learned when others were resting. He practiced when others were distracted. He stayed consistent when others were emotional. Still, nothing dramatic happened. And that's where most people quit. Because society trains you to expect fast results. But success doesn't reward impatience. It rewards endurance. People continued doubting him because they couldn't see progress. They confused silence with failure. What they didn't know was that something dangerous was being built. Discipline. And discipline doesn't need attention. It only needs time. Every rejection strengthened his skin. Every delay sharpened his focus. Every insult clarified his purpose. He stopped taking things personally. He started taking things seriously. He didn't want to be liked. He wanted to be undeniable. And slowly, without noise, without celebration, his standards rose. He became harder on himself than anyone else ever was. He expected more from himself than the world expected from him. That's when the shift began, not outside. Inside, his posture changed. His decisions changed. His tolerance for nonsense disappeared. He stopped asking, "What if I fail?" and started asking, "What if I don't try?" That question haunted him more than fear ever could. Nobody believed in him, so he built belief through action. And action, repeated daily, started building something unstoppable. This was only the foundation. As the days turned into months, he learned a hard truth. Belief alone doesn't carry you forward. Belief needs structure. It needs routine. It needs sacrifice. So he built a life that supported the person he was trying to become, not the person the world expected him to stay. He redesigned his days before he redesigned his future. He woke up earlier, not because it was trendy, but because silence sharpened his focus. He removed distractions, not because he hated fun, but because he respected his goal. He stopped scrolling through other people's lives and started building his own. Progress was slow, painfully slow. And that's where most people give up. They say they believe in themselves, but only when it feels good. Only when results are visible. Only when others approve. He understood something deeper. Real belief shows up when nothing is working yet. There were moments when exhaustion whispered lies. Moments when doubt tried to sound reasonable. Moments when quitting felt like relief. But he didn't quit. Not because he was strong, but because he was tired of restarting. Tired of explaining why things didn't work. Tired of being disappointed in himself. So he kept going. He studied when no one was watching. He practiced when no one cared. He improved when no one applauded. People still didn't believe in him. Some even mocked his discipline. They said he was doing too much. They said he was obsessed. They said life wasn't that serious. They were right about one thing. Life isn't that serious if you're okay staying average. He wasn't. He learned to sit with discomfort. To work while uncertain, to move without guarantees, he stopped needing reassurance. He trusted the process even when the process felt unfair. Failures stacked up, plans collapsed. Opportunities slipped away. But instead of breaking him, they educated him. He didn't ask, "Why me?" He asked, "What now?" That question changed everything. He adapted, he refined, he returned stronger. He became obsessed with improvement, not comparison. He tracked progress others ignored. Small wins, quiet growth, invisible strength, and slowly the gap appeared. The gap between who he used to be and who he was becoming. The gap between talkers and doers. The gap between potential and performance. People still didn't believe in him, but they started noticing something different. His consistency. Consistency is uncomfortable because it exposes excuses. It doesn't care about mood. It doesn't care about circumstances. It only rewards commitment. He didn't chase recognition. He chased competence. He didn't chase praise. He chased progress. And progress, when repeated long enough, becomes intimidating. That's when resistance showed up, not from strangers, but from people close to him. They questioned his choices. They warned him not to aim too high. They told him to be realistic. He listened politely and ignored completely. He learned another lesson. When you change, people around you feel threatened, not because you're wrong, but because your growth challenges their comfort. So he walked alone when needed, quietly, focused, unapologetic. He stopped announcing goals. He let results speak instead. And even though nobody believed in him yet, something had shifted permanently. He did. Belief was no longer an idea. It was a habit. And habits repeated daily reshaped destiny. This was no longer about proving anyone wrong. This was about becoming someone undeniable. And the world always reacts when discipline meets patience. By the time real opportunities began to appear, he was already ready. Not lucky. Ready. That's the difference most people never understand. When preparation meets opportunity, the world calls it success. When opportunity arrives without preparation, the world calls it failure. He didn't look successful yet, but he had built something far more important: capacity. He could handle pressure. He could handle long hours. He could handle responsibility without supervision. While others panicked under pressure, he stayed calm. While others complained about difficulty, he focused on execution. He had trained his mind to stay steady when things got uncomfortable. That made him dangerous. Not loud, not flashy, but dangerous. People started trusting him with bigger responsibilities, not because he asked, but because he delivered. He didn't demand opportunities, he earned them. He didn't talk about potential, he demonstrated reliability. Slow progress turned into noticeable progress. Still, nobody celebrated him. That was fine. He had learned not to rely on applause. Applause fades. Discipline doesn't. There were setbacks, big ones, moments where everything he built seemed ready to collapse. Projects failed. People disappointed him. Some doors closed permanently. But this time, failure didn't shake his identity. Because his identity was no longer tied to outcomes, it was tied to effort. He understood that winning wasn't about avoiding loss. It was about continuing after loss. So instead of quitting, he adjusted. Instead of blaming, he learned. Instead of breaking, he adapted. This is where belief became unshakable. Not blind belief, earned belief. Belief backed by proof. He had proof that he could survive hard seasons. Proof that he could stay disciplined when motivation disappeared. Proof that he could build momentum from nothing. And momentum is powerful. Once momentum starts, it changes how people treat you. They may not admit it, but they feel it. Your confidence unsettles them. Your calm irritates them. Your progress forces them to question their excuses. Some people started supporting him. Others became silent. A few turned negative. He didn't react. Reaction wastes energy. Direction creates results. He stayed focused on what mattered: growth, skill, consistency. He sharpened his thinking. He strengthened his habits. He raised his standards. He no longer needed external belief because internal belief had become automatic. And then something interesting happened. The same people who once doubted him began to ask questions, not supportive questions. Curious ones. How did you do it? What changed? When did this start? They wanted the outcome without the process. He didn't explain much. Because explanations don't change people. Examples do. He didn't feel proud. He felt responsible to stay sharp, responsible to stay disciplined, responsible to not become the very thing he once struggled against. Comfort, so he pushed harder, he learned faster, he stayed hungry. Wait. Success didn't make him softer, it made him sharper, and without realizing it, he crossed a line most people never do. He stopped being someone who was trying, he became someone who was becoming, and when that happens, the world has no choice but to respond. By the time people finally believed in him, it no longer mattered. That was the irony. The validation he once wanted had arrived too late to control him. He had already built something stronger than approval. Self-trust. His life had changed, not suddenly, but permanently. His environment improved. His income improved, his influence grew, but the most important upgrade was invisible. His standards had risen, he no longer tolerated laziness, excuses, or half-effort from himself or anyone around him. He understood a truth that separates the few from the many. Success doesn't come from proving others wrong. It comes from proving yourself disciplined. The same people who once ignored him now listened. The same voices that doubted him now repeated his words. But he didn't celebrate their change. He remembered the nights nobody saw, the sacrifices nobody respected, the consistency nobody praised, and he stayed grounded because he knew how easy it is to lose everything when ego replaces effort. He didn't slow down, he evolved. He reinvested in growth. He mentored others. He shared knowledge not to be admired but to remind himself where he came from. He never mocked struggle because struggle had built him. He taught one message again and again. You don't need permission to believe in yourself. You don't need applause to stay consistent. You don't need validation to keep going. He showed people that belief without action is useless. But action without belief is impossible. When both align, transformation becomes inevitable. His story spread quietly, not through noise, but through impact. People saw proof. Families changed their thinking. Young minds saw possibility. Ordinary people realized that greatness doesn't announce itself. It builds silently. He became a symbol, not of perfection, but of discipline. A reminder that background does not decide destiny. Doubt does not define direction. Silence does not mean failure. And most importantly, belief is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. He was never special. He was committed. He was never lucky. He was consistent. He was never chosen. He chose himself. Nobody believed in him. So he believed in himself. And that belief, backed by relentless action, changed everything.